All right, very good. We are live on YouTube. Angelo, it's all yours when you're ready.
All right, hello, and welcome to the Human Rights Commission. My name is Angelo. I'm the chair of the commission, and I'm from Ward 2. And then my pronouns are he, him, his. And as always, we'll do introductions popcorn style. I'll just call on somebody and then keep it moving. All right, Mike, kick it off.
Oh, Angelo, you always go to me, and I'm never ready. Hello, Mike Waters. My pronouns are they and them. I am in Ward 7, and I will pass it to Krista, who I always pass it to. It's becoming a thing.
Hi, I'm Krista. I use she, her, hers, and I'm from Ward 4. I'm also the vice chair, and we'll go to Drew.
Hi, I'm Drew. My pronouns are he, him, and I live in Ward 3, and we'll go to Tricarico.
Hi, I'm Tricarico. My pronouns are they, them. I live in Ward 2, and I will pass it to Oni.
Hi, I'm Oni Marchbanks, and I believe I'm Ward 6.
I think so too.
Yeah. So I'll pass it to Debbie.
Hi, I'm Debbie Aguilar. I'm a lieutenant with the Salem Police Department, and I'm the liaison between the Police Department and the Human Rights Commission. And I'll pass it to David.
Hi, my name is David Reinhold. I'm a resident of Polk County, and I go by, my pronouns are he and him, and I'll pass it to Gretchen.
Hi, Gretchen Bennett, staff, City of Salem, Mayor and City Manager's Office. He, her pronouns, or he, wow, her, she pronouns, and I'll go to Oliver.
Hi, my name is Oliver. I don't know what ward I'm in, but my pronouns are he, him, and is there anyone left to pass it to?
I'd like to welcome Ryan in more detail too. Yeah, oh, and Nathan too.
Okay, I'll pass it to Nathan.
All right, I'm Nathan. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm from Ward 7.
Thank you. And yeah, I know I already introduced Ryan a little bit. He's a senior at Corbin University studying political science. And Ryan, if you'd like to say hello.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Ryan. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm just from Corbin University, interning with the City of Salem, and I'm just excited to absorb as much as I can and learn and contribute. So yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Do we have any public comment today, Gretchen?
Not that I am aware of.
Okay, do any of our guests tonight have anything they want to say? All right, so we can move on to the consent calendar. I believe that we have 2 agendas and 2 minutes that we have to approve. And then I think Gretchen said that she sent out new minutes. Is that correct, Gretchen?
It is. You've got a new updated set of minutes for the January 26th meeting. I made a correction this afternoon and appreciate your patience with me as I send out a second set. So you've got tonight's agenda and both sets of January meeting minutes in the consent calendar tonight.
And then whenever anybody's ready, go ahead and do a motion to consent to both agendas and minutes.
All right, well, I can motion if you want to both agendas and minutes.
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor say aye. All right, okay, any opposed? All right, well, that's done. We can move on to the action and or discussion items. All right, bias crime updates. I believe that's Lieutenant Aguilar.
Yes. So we had 2 bias crimes to report, and then we had 5 bias incidents. So the bias crimes, the first one occurred in West Salem. And it involved a victim who, so the victim used to date the suspect's father. And then the victim and the suspect have had a past history. The victim and the suspect's father both live in the same area. So the victim and her kids were in this mutual area when the suspect drove in. And as the suspect drove in, made some racial comments towards the victim and her children who are Black, and then also threatened to kill the victim and the children. And she was clearly in fear of her life. And unfortunately, the suspect left prior to the officer arriving and investigating. However, the officer does have probable cause to arrest the suspect. So we're actively looking for that suspect. So once he's arrested, then he'll be charged with the bias crime statute. The second one does not have any suspect in it and was in Northeast Salem and involves some graffiti to an exterior wall of a business. And the graffiti included KKK swastikas, as well as some other graffiti that wasn't associated with a race or religion. The business owner said he didn't feel the graffiti was directed at him. He wasn't sure who exactly it was directed at, but he did call us, and we were able to have our graffiti staff cover over the graffiti after we took a report on that. So there's, like I said, there's no suspect on that. So those are the two crimes. And then we had, like I said, 5 bias incidents. Four of them were actually in either Southeast Salem or South Salem, with one occurring in West Salem. The one in West Salem involved roommates who got into, 2 of the roommates got into a verbal and physical argument, and the third roommate started to separate the 2 who were fighting, and one of the individuals who was fighting made a racial slur towards the roommate who was intervening in the fight. We responded. Nobody wanted to be a victim of the fight, but it was documented as a bias incident. The next one was a neighbor dispute. Downstairs neighbor reported to us that an upstairs neighbor has been harassing them because of not only their sexual identity, but their race. The upstairs neighbor has been calling the downstairs neighbor derogatory names, racial slurs, and then also the children of the downstairs neighbors have been bullied by other neighborhood children who are associated with the upstairs apartment. So the victim has been working with their landlord to try to deal with the neighbor complaints. There was no crime, but the victims or the neighbors were referred to the new bias crime hotline that I talked to you about through Oregon Department of Justice. The next one also was a neighborhood or an apartment dispute where one neighbor had reported to us that another neighbor was calling them derogatory comments about their sexual orientation. Again, no crime, but we did take that as a bias incident. The next one was we called it a telephonic harassment. However, it really wasn't telephonic harassment. It was really more of a bias incident because an unknown person on social media was making derogatory and racist comments towards not only towards the victim, but the Asian community in general. So that was documented under a bias incident. And then the last one was, again, a neighborhood or apartment complex with neighbors who last summer, a neighbor had called the caller's child a racist slur, which occurred last summer. But the caller was reporting that conduct right now, because again, some other stuff had come up involving that dispute. And so the caller wanted it reported and us to be aware about the conduct and the racial slur that was used last summer. So that was documented under a bias incident as well. So, and then also Gretchen did me the favor of sending out, it was a little bit late, so I apologize, I was late getting it to her, but a summary of the 2020 bias crimes and bias incidents that anyone's, you're more than welcome to read through it if you haven't. And if you have any questions now, I'm more than happy to answer, or at the next meeting if you have any questions. And that's all I have on the bias crimes and bias incidents.
Thank you. Any questions from the commissioners? All right, hearing no questions, Gretchen, complaints / concerns of discrimination.
Thank you. I had one reported to me in the report period. A person communicated in to let us know that over the summer and into the year, they've noticed several different times when they've been witness to or heard essentially microaggressions around them in their neighborhood. They're of Chinese American descent, and when they were outside at their place of residence, would hear people saying things that were racially offensive about people who were Chinese. We talked through that experience, and I shared a couple of tools that relate to interrupting microaggressions at the person's interest of like thinking about when and how to interrupt or have that conversation. And we explored other approaches as well. But that was the one that I had reported to me in the report period.
Okay, thank you, Gretchen. All right, what's next? Okay, work plan development. Zara. Okay, so let's see. All right, Gretchen, do you have any idea how you want to start our work plan development? Because I know it's a lot, so I need a starting point.
I know it, right? Well, I believe I know that you were wanting to walk through the document that's kind of a one-pager that offers a pathway. The document includes possible objectives, possible tasks in February and early March, and possible questions. That document was shared last week at our January 26th meeting and then was updated after the discussion last week to reflect some of the key points that were made at last week's discussion. It also references the documents that Commissioner Schwartz had shared with the commission as beginning kind of grounding documents to move forward. That's kind of in that list of January that we received those documents. Angela, I don't know if you want to walk through that or as a place of beginning, because it kind of offers a potential path, or if you'd like me to do that, up to you.
Yeah, I think I'll read the February bullet points, and then we'll go from there. All right, so February, it says develop additional community engagement options, develop criteria for shifting ideas, examine ideas, shift and make preliminary selections, and that would come in the form of a special meeting, a second special meeting for February. And then conduct research to develop selected ideas. And then some questions for that would be, which are shovel-ready? Which would require some research? Which would be recommendations to others, examples, districts, state, federal? And which would the commission be interested to further develop this year?
And there's a list of possible objectives at the beginning that incorporate some of the concepts as well. at the beginning of the document that people might find helpful as well.
And then I'll just read those possibly objectives. Lead with race, utilize results-based accountability, ensure the community can see it, hold it, spend it, or feel it, deliver on time. Recommendations to council in March. Hear voices, BIPOC general cross-sector of community, establish relationships with the people we want to serve, help people feel safe, understand the why, and address the root of the problem, and intersect with council. Opportunities for HRC/council consultation along the way.
So I don't know if there's reactions off of the idea for the process. I think like Angelo's or like Chair Arredondo suggested, I think tonight one approach would be to think about how would we sift through the ideas that we've received so far in terms of maybe earmarking some ready to go and some which you might want more information on. And then also, do you have other ideas for gathering additional information? You know, there may be other mechanisms by which you want to hear additional information, or some of you may have additional information that you want to share. So that might be a point of beginning.
And this is Tricarico. I know one thing we discussed in the awareness task force was that since we are doing some quarterly newsletter and outreach to our existing contacts, we thought about asking some of those contacts what they were wanting to see from us, especially in light of the mayor's request, as like a continued outreach. Because yes, I've done some, but I have not reached everyone by any stretch. There's a lot of people that, you know, I haven't talked to. And I do want to make sure that we are serving our community. So that might be something to consider as part of that process.
Great idea. If you're interested, we may also be able to do some general things like pop something on our webpage that invites comment, like an open text box, for example, where people can type in and share thoughts, or a social media post that invites people, maybe directs people to that text box.
Yeah, I think that'd be a great idea. I think the more feedback, the better, because then we hear from every single part of our community, and I think that's the goal at the end. So yeah, definitely listening to community is one part of it.
This is Mike. As Tricarico mentioned, we talked about it in awareness, and we also talked about it in LGBTQ intersectional task force. We don't have the notes for those two task forces yet because they were just last week. But there are some ideas to pull from those notes, and Carrick absolutely right. We also talked about it in awareness of using our existing email platform to reach out to folks. And I love the idea of the text box on the website.
Well, that's great. So far, I think I'm hearing get the notes from the other meeting. I actually had a conflicting meeting myself and so missed the task forces. So I still need to get the notes from the meetings and see what additional ideas are on there, but implement those ideas as well as add a text box and create a communication that would go to the email group. We have built an email group that is a combination of people who've expressed interest in hearing from the Human Rights Commission, as well as people who have expressed interest from the perspective of representing a particular group or organization. So we've kind of got both kind of individuals and organization representatives on the list. So we can send out to all of those folks and invite communication.
Yeah, and then I think a minor update as well is I started asking Gretchen about the Salem Arts Commission, and see how they operate, what's their budget, because I do want to work with them on some ideas that we talked about previously on the other meeting. And so I think Gretchen will be in contact with them as well.
Yeah, and this is Ryan. Something I wanted to mention is that I'm doing my senior project on a topic about community policing, and I'm actually completing a literature review on the topic pretty soon. So I'd be happy to share, anything that I find that's meaningful for the discussion after I complete that.
Great, thank you.
I have had a project that this is Oliver. I've had a project that I've been working on for a little bit. Mike and Tricarico have actually been helping me out a little bit with this. I met with the superintendent of the Salem Kaiser School District to discuss some LGBTQ subjects in lessons and bathrooms and locker rooms and stuff like that. So one of my goals, at least, is to at least have the LGBTQ subjects going in that direction, like having them being put into the lessons sometime soon.
Awesome, thank you, Oliver. As you crystallize maybe those thoughts, don't hesitate to send information my way for inclusion in the documents.
Great, I'll do that.
I think as a way to organize our ideas, I think I want to use the outline where we can discuss, we can divide the ideas between which ones are, ready to go, which ones we can just present right now, and then which ones we need to do some research on. I think that would be a good starting point for this.
It occurs to me that that'll be where it'll be really helpful to have some discussion here to think through what that sifting could look like or what criteria would be involved. It would certainly be a matter of opinion, what is ready and what is not ready, and what is a prepared concept and what isn't. I think it depends on the knowledge base of the person reading the idea, the commission's comfort and support for each idea, how much information each of you have about each idea. Some things may be immediately topics where you may want more information. Other topics may be immediately self-evident as ready to go. And I think it'll probably vary as you look at the documents and given all of your varied experiences. I know as a city commission, coming through with something doesn't have to all happen right now. I think people are feeling some sense of timeline, and I think it's doable to produce some immediate recommendations and then to say, here's some others that we want to work on this year, or ones that we want you to research this year, or we want some other entity to do this year. It's okay to kind of chunk them into sections. That might be a helpful way to go about it. So I would, invite discussion. I hope you had the opportunity to look through some of the documents that Commissioner Schwartz provided. There's a number of ideas presented, and they might vary for you as you consume them and you think about the different pieces.
This is Mike. I have a question for the group, but also for Gretchen, which is I think it starts to get a little tricky when we get to the stage of sifting through the ideas and kind of prioritizing them. And I wondered if we could bring on additional community members or like some of our experts that we've had, like Dr. Brown, if they are, of course, willing to provide some additional insight. Just given the makeup of the commission, I want to make sure that we're really, walking the talk around letting it be somewhat community driven when we get to that prioritization step.
Absolutely. This is an unprecedented request for you, and you can request back whatever you need. If it's more time, if it's to increase the voices, if it's to, I remember, I keep thinking about something Oni said at the last meeting, Commissioner Marchbank said at the last meeting about let's lead this with Black voices. Do you want to do it that way? However you want to structure it, I mean, feel free to say, hey, we're getting all this input. Here's how we want to tackle examining this input. Absolutely. But that question wasn't just directed at me. I feel like I just jumped in and answered. I'm sorry. Mike, Angelo, I didn't mean to speak for you.
Oh yeah, no worries. Do any of the other commissioners have any thoughts on it?
This is Drew. I really like that idea because the more people we bring to the table, the more diverse we're going to be, and the more we can come together to bring a more concrete solution and plan to the city. One thing that I brought up last week that I think would be a good thing to possibly consider adding to our work plan is more education to the neighborhood associations regarding the Human Rights Commission, what we do, and what concerns have been brought up to us, so that we can also educate the Human Rights Commission on issues on the neighborhood associations, so because they're almost like the frontline people who deal with this, not just us. And I think bringing them on board would be a good thing for the city in the unity aspect. So I was just thinking about that.
You might also include a process where you provide all of the input you've received, and then from that, here's a report of some ideas, and then here's a document of a Human Rights Commission work plan. You might imagine 3 things move forward. Here's the totality of the input we've received. Here are some recommendations we have for you soon. And then here are some things that we're going to tackle this year as a Human Rights Commission, and we want to collaborate with you on making those happen. That's an approach. Angelo, I did it again. You go ahead.
No need to worry. I think it's also a thing to know that, Gretchen, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the city's doing their budget right now. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So I think if we want, to do something that relates to budget, I think we have to, act. I think we have to prioritize that if we want this to get done now, because that's going on right now. And then if we present our ideas, relating to budgetary, related to the budget, we can get those started right away if we get approved on those. So I think it'd be a good way to also going to prioritize some ideas as well.
Good point. Like you might flag ones that have fiscal impact and point those out since they're doing budgeting right now.
Gretchen, and when does that end? Or when's like the deadline for that?
Oh, well, it's happening. It's underway in terms of the city council is working on a strategic plan that would be a part of driving it. And they've certainly been talking about equity as a part of their strategic plan. The budget committee had a meeting on, I believe, January 20th. And then I believe that they meet again in April. In the meantime, a recommended city manager budget will come out before the budget committee, and then the budget committee will have opportunity to take a look at that. I can email folks the budget committee link as background in case you might find that interesting. And Dr. Brown, I think, shared at the last meeting that he is a member of the city's budget committee. The budget committee is made up of people who were appointed to serve in that way, just like all of you were appointed to serve as Human Rights Commission members. And then it's also made up of all of the elected officials. It's a combination of community appointees and elected officials that comprise the budget committee.
Yeah, because I'm looking at one of these from the document that I think is very important, which is the one that talks about paying city councilors and the mayor a modest wage, because I think that's important, because that is how we will get people of color on the table. That's how we will change policy. Paying a modest wage for these jobs, because right now they're voluntary jobs, and only people, primarily only white people can afford to go for these positions because they have, their outside careers and all that. They're ready, but people of color don't have that opportunity, and so that's one that I would think would be good to prioritize, especially because it's a big budgetary thing, and that's coming up, and for us to do that, for us to have that ready for hopefully next elections or the elections before that, I think it'd be a good thing to focus on.
Hi, this is Oni. So to make those positions paid position doesn't really guarantee that people of color, BIPOC community will get those positions, right? Because it can be the same thing that it's always been. And how about more specifically designating a position for a paid position for, I wonder, can you do that for BIPOC? So I think my concern is that it's no guarantee that if those positions are paid, that that the process or the policies or the way things have always been done is going to change. It's just going to add a paycheck to their already fat pockets. So I don't know. Is there a next step? Is there something? And I know if it's a paid position, more people are likely to apply. So that does open up the door. I guess it's a good recommendation. We just have to see if that creates a change. I guess we got to start somewhere.
This is Mike, and I don't have a comment specifically on that, but I did note that in our LGBT group, the issue of staffing came up in general. We have, we've been really lucky to have Gretchen as our liaison for the commission, and she's also the liaison for about 800 other things. I'm probably exaggerating, but the idea of having stronger diversity coordination at the city was really appealing, I think, to our LGBTQ group. And Tricarico, you may have to correct if I misstated any of that, but that was something that came up was, what can we do to support these efforts from within? Regarding the council, those are elected positions. And I think Angelo's point was maybe around the opportunity for people to run for those positions who don't currently have another option, but they are elected. So that I just wanted to note that.
Yeah, this is Tricarico. Our conversation was talking about how in some cities they have a designated coordinator specifically for marginalized communities, representing those communities. Like I was looking at a job the other day, the city of Portland has an LGBTQIA+ analyst that looks specifically at that community. I know Salem may not be big enough to have one for every different type of diverse population we have, but that might be another option of not only do we have this person that's dedicated to this, it's a paid position, and priority goes to someone who has a lived experience as a marginalized person, right? And you can legally put that in a job description. I see it in state jobs all the time because, you know, the easy justification is we need someone who understands the lived experience, right? That has to be a priority. So that's another way that we could offer not only the opportunity for diverse voices to come to the table, but for them to be compensated for their time, because that's a tough job, right? That's not an easy job. You know, that's going to be a really taxing job, and we need to support that person.
And Tricarico, you said that was the city of Portland, correct?
Yes, and they may have other positions. That's just one I happen to see.
Yeah, because I think that's a great point as well. Paying somebody just specifically for this. Yeah, I would like to see, you know, do some quick research on that and see how Portland deals with it. How they, you know, how they decide, you know, who they give this position to, you know, all that. So we can then, I think that's a great idea, honestly. Okay, any more thoughts on these two documents?
I'm wondering how you'll want to decide which ones, you know, which ones to research more, which ones not. Your conversation's been really helpful so far, and you've been lifting up a couple of the items and saying, all right, this is interesting. I want to see how Portland does this. You know, I can see, you know, are we going to get to the outcome if we recommend that? You know, you're making some good points. I mean, the engineer in me wants to like create a document that pulls out each suggestion so far separately and invites you almost to note like shovel ready, needs more information, I'm not sure, or something like that. But I know we're also in the process of gathering additional information. You know, one thing I would really recommend is making sure that everything that comes out of the Human Rights Commission is something that each of you understands, believes, you know, will get to goal. And so you'll wanna be asking yourself, you know, am I good with these ideas? What information do I need if I were trying to explain these to a member of city council? So I'm wondering how to get there. Like, is that overly simplistic to throw them all into a survey and invite you to click? Like, I could literally put each idea into a survey with the same little drop down menu. Good to go, need more information, but I don't mean to be overly simplistic, but I just wanted to generate some discussion about how you'll do the good work that you were just doing on a couple of the ideas with a full breadth. You've got some, you've got pages of ideas here. So I'm wondering how to do it. What do you think?
This is Tricarico, and I've asked this before, but maybe we can ask the city, what is it exactly that they want from us? Because they've said they want a report, right? So like, is this a report with fully, you know, thought through ideas and plans of action? Or is this a report of like, here's the issues, right? And I think that would help us because like, yes, I want to research everything, but also like, that's a lot. Like you said, we have pages, and I want to be realistic about what we can actually accomplish. And I don't want things to get lost because we're researching, you know, all these things over here. So I kind of would want to know what they're expecting from us so that we can know, okay, which things do we need to like fully develop versus which things do they understand already and can they go with?
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that question. Let's maybe think about that together. One idea would be to do exactly that. Like maybe there's a letter drafted by our chair or something, or you can direct me as your staff liaison to simply put that question before our elected officials and say, hey, we'd like a little more direction. And you can kind of unpack a little bit more about that question, and then we can see what we get. A second idea would be to go ahead and put together kind of a check-in document. Here are the voices we've heard so far. Here's the information. We've not yet sifted these ideas. We'd like to pause and check in with you and engage with you on what would be the most helpful for you. We understand you're building a budget right now. So I guess there's a couple ways to go about it. What do y'all think?
This is Mike. Something is really appealing to me about giving them the broad range of ideas as a starting point. One of the it's a mild concern, but I have a concern about the idea of sifting between shovel ready and needs more research, because that doesn't necessarily get at what's most important. Some things may be shovel ready, but may not be as important to the community when we're talking with the community. And then some things may be super, super important, but they're long and complicated and need a lot of research. So there is something to me that's really appealing about making sure that as a check-in process as well, making sure that the council sees all of the ideas that come in from the community without us putting our filter on it, if that makes sense.
Great point. If you put yourselves in the shoes of the mayor and council with some diverse perspectives there, what do you think would be the most helpful? I'm thinking about that document that we've looked at a couple of times together about kind of how to make recommendations. If you were in their shoes, what would help in your view? And probably just that kind of discourse, like, hey, this is what we're hearing so far from the community. Before we go deeper, which ones of these might resonate with some of the work that you're doing or be of particular interest? You may also want to hold on to the opportunity to recommend some regardless of what they say, because that's the voice that you want to bring forward. I know any city commission is expected, and including the Human Rights Commission, there's language about hearing all of our voices. Like, it's important to really get a lot of input and to be able to hear from a variety of identities. That's going to be really important. And to make sure that anything that comes forward is factual, is correct. Wouldn't want to see anything emerge that's inaccurate, or that's an important part of developing a recommendation as well. I'll send you that recommendations document as you think about how do you make recommendations.
As we continue to look at this, I strongly recommend that we do have another special meeting. I know it's another meeting, but I do think it's important to continue working on this. And so if nobody's opposed to that, I would like, Gretchen to just send a couple dates again, a couple times, and to see, what's the best date for everybody. Does anybody oppose that idea?
Would the week of February 15th make sense?
Hey, Gretchen, I got a question. This is Drew.
Yeah.
I'm all up for having another meeting because this is a lot to like really digest because everyone has their own idea and we need to come together as one. But I'm also playing kind of devil's advocate here. And what is the timeline that the council wants this work plan so that they know what we're planning to do as a commission for the rest of the year?
Thank you. The mayor and council did not put a timeline on the request. So really that's yours to determine. Some of you have noted the budget process coming up and wanting to get ahead of the budget process. And so on the draft document that's before you to help guide, one idea was to at least bring some information back in March to the council, because that gets you ahead of the budget process and offers some information with complete respect for the fact that you could be by no means complete. So you might have some things in March that you say, hey, we recommend these. And then you have some other things that you say, we recommend these, could be really important, but we think they need some more research and development. But we wanted to flag them and get your thoughts. The document suggests tonight you decide kind of how to sift and how to gather more voices. And then we get that additional input, and then you come together at a second meeting in February to kind of refine ideas and consider public input, check back in with the public about your short list, and move towards a preliminary document that you can vote on at the March meeting of the commission, which could then go to the council later in March. It's a really aggressive timeline. And you could easily just choose not to do that because this work is important. And you could say, you know what, instead, we recommend we do a community-led process. Here's what it looks like. Here's how it would be led. Here's how it would be facilitated. Here's how we would think through each of the recommendations. And it's going to take a little bit. And that's okay. I mean, you could take a completely different approach and frankly intend to inform next year's budget process. Or you could give them a heads up and say, we have some things that we really do want you to consider right now, and we want to do a longer process. It's really up to you.
I got another thing here. This is true. I was wondering an idea to get community involvement. This might be a little late coming to the show, but because of COVID, of course, we can't have like a little like town hall with the Human Rights Commission. But if there was something we could put on the website or out there where the community can see it, that we're taking ideas of what is the community's priorities for the coming year or the coming fiscal year. I think that would be a good way to engage the community and kind of read the temperature of what the citizens are looking at. And then we can take, from the website, whatever comments we get, we can compile it into a document, go over it, and then prioritize from that document what the citizens want out of their city for the next coming year.
Absolutely, you can. Krista's raising her hand.
Hi, this is Krista. So one of the ideas that I came up with, I know before COVID, we were talking about having the town halls, and it happened because maybe the community and the conversation was a little bit more relaxed and trying to invite other people. And we could see what the people wanted and hear what they were concerned about, and we could prioritize the same way as well. But we had maybe 2 or 3 different events a year. So I don't know if that's something that we could do somehow now.
You could actually absolutely do a digital environment town hall. There's nothing wrong with that at all. I think we can handle 250 or 300 on Zoom if we really want to, if we think through how to do it.
It would take a lot of patience.
This is Mike. I don't know about all of you, and I'm interested in what everybody's perspective is on it. I don't mind at all having more regular meetings as we work through this process, and I don't mind a later February meeting, but maybe pushing to have all of this sort of community input in by March is a little fast. So I would maybe, from my perspective, it wouldn't bother me to keep pushing forward on having an additional meeting so that we can start the process, but maybe not necessarily commit to such an aggressive timeline. At the same time, because the community is sharing input with us, and they shouldn't be burdened by our process of sifting things. I also really like Gretchen's idea of the check-in with council with the broad list of ideas so that council is fully aware of what the community is asking for in an aggregate form. Because I know as a community member, it can be really frustrating when you give your input on a survey or you tell somebody that you trust, this is the things the community needs, and then you don't necessarily see things happening very quickly. And I think, I don't think we should push forward with unnecessary urgency, but we should raise those voices as quickly as we can because they are taking their time to share with us. Those were my thoughts.
So this is Oni. So there's a document that we already received with our voices, community input, several documents, right? And so the ones in the community who are outspoken or who are speaking up have spoken. As far as getting community output, I think you've heard the voices because they've talked to other people in the community. It wasn't just created by one person or one group. It was a community effort. Maybe they fine-lined it and put the dotted the I's across the T's kind of thing. So I'm not really sure about when you say you need to get more community, especially with the document that I think Tricarico submitted. I'm not really sure when you say you need to get more community input. What does that look like? Where are you going? I'm in the community. I'm going to say the Black community, so it's not that big in Salem, right? And so I think our voices are on that document. I think for me, it's about now what does that look like? There's some demands that have been written. There's some requirements and there's some hopes and some wishes, some things that we would like to see. So how does that play out in real life? How can we feel that? How can we have that experience of what we've asked, what we require? And I think that's where I want to go. I don't want to sound callous. I'm just not one for a lot of talking and a lot of talking over and over again. And let's get to some action. I need to, because a plan for the future to me is something like I've always heard as a Black woman. When it was yesterday that I needed to experience this stuff, for considering the history of not implementing these things or not taking these requirements or suggestions seriously and experiencing the same thing over and over again. So I want to explore how we can bring these things to fruition, and maybe even if it's a lot of asks, right? A lot of things that we want changed, but what can we take a few of them and explore what that will look like in an experience, or something we can feel, something we can actually experience for this 6 months, and then move on to something else once we've experienced those things or that one thing, something.
Great point. If you don't mind my saying, I think what I'm hearing you say is you could also grab some for right now, and then others for maybe in a queue for the next 6 months and the next 6 months. You could give all of them to mayor and council as here's what we're hearing. And what if we begin with these? Recognizing everything can't happen automatically. You know, these will probably going to take more time. These might take some advocacy at the federal level. These might take some legal research. These, you know, let's do them now, or we recommend them right now, for example.
Yes.
It might help to write, and this might be a question that would help everybody and also be good to put into the document. It might help to write a little bit about how the documents came to be in terms of sharing a little bit about kind of who was involved or how many people or how many, some way to kind of help explain how they came to be. I could see how that would be good background or helpful information. I imagine a city councilor might say, well, tell me more about how this list came to be. And so some way of answering that or writing it in the document, I could see being helpful, be a natural question.
Yeah, I can add a blurb to mine. And then I think Krista wanted to say something, and I don't know that she got that chance. Are you there, Krista?
Krista, we don't have your visual. We have a black screen for you. I don't know if your video camera's on right now. There you are. Krista, did you have anything you wanted to share? We worried we missed you.
Oh, sorry, I forgot what it was. I had to take a break from it being on, but I'm still in the meeting. But I forgot what it was that I was gonna mention at that moment.
So this is Tricarico again. Gretchen, you mentioned putting each of the ideas in a quick quiz to be like, okay, this needs to develop, this doesn't. I'm wondering if we could do that, but in a way that prioritizes, like, these are the things that we want to push forward right now to recommend, because then we can vote on it. And I think that'd be a lot faster than all of us like talking about. Like, I love talking to all of you, but I also know there's so many things, right? And it would be a cool way to kind of help us get to the, okay, these are the things that we really need to recommend right now. These are the things that we still want to tell the council about, so we're getting those voices heard, but maybe we need more time. And so that might be a good way to kind of balance that, because I hear, you know, Mike and Oni saying, okay, we have some stuff that needs to be done now, but we also know there's going to be stuff that needs to be done later. So maybe that's a way to kind of navigate that from the start.
I'm seeing some nods and I'd be happy to do that. One question that's coming into my mind, and I might be able to figure this out, but I would also welcome input, is maybe a question gets asked that sort of invites, what's the word, adaptations on the idea that's presented. Like, there's one in there about cahoots and the idea of a mobile crisis response unit that invites a direction that to redirect a percentage of the current police budget to create a model that is similar to cahoots in Eugene, which sends out like an emergency medical person and a social services worker to address a moment of crisis out on the streets instead of sending a police officer. There's a few parts to that. And I'm actually speaking of wearing lots of hats, Mike, that's one of the things that I'm currently working on for the city, is evaluating a cahoots model for Salem. And there's components to that. There's a few different parts of that suggestion. And like, for example, some of you may be wanting to recommend part of it, but not all of it. So I'm also thinking about having some sort of open spot where people can kind of tease them. Some of the ideas are have multiple parts to them, I guess I would say. So there might be a way I can add a question in that survey that kind of invites you to like say, well, this part I like, this part I'm not sure about, or this part I have some questions on. I don't know, maybe I might be splitting hairs, but it's coming to mind. So I thought I'd throw it out there in case anyone had thoughts.
Hi, this is Oni. So there's on that document that you're talking about, there's some things that are already in play, right? Like you said, you guys are already in conversation about cahoots and how we can bring that to Salem and how you can make that happen. That's already happening. And I think the commission can support something like that. So if that's already happening and the conversation is already happening, they're planning on bringing cahoots, we can support it. We don't got to recommend it over, right? Can we pick something else? Things that are already in play are already has already been recommended. And they're actually, it's actually in conversation. It starts with conversation, then there's some planning that happens. And I think that with the list that I have, there's a lot on there that isn't in play, that is not being considered. And I think cahoots is going to happen. I really do, considering I've seen the work that City Council Commissioner Vanessa Nordyke is doing, and I've seen people. I've heard this conversation, and yeah, and I think it's great. I support it. I also think that it's already being done. Can we look at other things that actually aren't getting any attention?
Yeah, good point. So I'm not sure how to mark that or note that. It might come to me as I'm working up this survey. And like, for example, cahoots might get done, but it might not be precisely as it's described on the document. There might be a version or an iteration, or maybe the funding mechanism is different, for example, than a 10% shift from PD. Maybe the funding is medical billing and legislative support and, a simple general fund allocation, for example, instead of a redirect from PD. And so is that nuance, or is that nuance front and center to the, recommendation, that kind of stuff?
So maybe each one that has multiple ideas just has like a general comment for people to put that in, because we could say, no, in cahoots it's not a priority, but that's because it's already in process, right? People might clarify like, yeah, it's a priority for me, but I'm not prioritizing it as a recommendation right now because it's already happening.
Yeah, like I think adding like a asterisk next to the ones that are already in play and just saying, "Think to note, already in play," blah blah blah. I think so that also commissioners know that that's already happening.
I'll find a way to denote that so it's real clear and accurate, because like being in play, might mean different things to different people. Like cahoots, for example, City Council has directed that staff and community partners analyze and figure out how this can work in Salem and to come back with a report. That's different from City Council has made a decision and allocated funding to create cahoots. But it is in play very actively. We're researching who can operate it, how much it would cost, where the money can come from. So, depends on definition. But yeah, I'll try to be accurate and kind of factual with that information so that everybody just kind of has the playing field and has the understanding. So I think, what am I hearing? I'm hearing that we would create something on the webpage that would invite input. I'm hearing that we would take the ideas and the documents that we've received so far and turn them into a survey wherein you have the opportunity to say, you know, to identify priorities, to kind of make comment, to note things, ask questions, identify which things need more research. I think that we would be wanting to check in with city council. I'm not sure if all of, if the entirety of the documents as they currently stand would go to council with a question, or if you want to wait a little bit. Maybe let's pause on that one. Or maybe that's something that you consider at the February meeting. You take some time to kind of think about it, do the survey. Or you can have me forward the documents in a simple casual email and say, you know, it might, I think we'd have to ask the question carefully so as not to confuse them. You know, I'd probably want some input on that. Or that becomes a part of what you produce in March. What comes in March maybe is, here's our initial thoughts. Here's some things the commission thinks should go right now. Here's the totality of what we heard and where we heard it from. And what else would you like us, what would you like from us? Here's some things we want to work on this year. Maybe that's kind of how the report to council begins to look like.
Yeah, Angela here. I think the first logical step would be to do, you know, the list that you were planning to do, Gretchen. And then from there, when everybody answers, come to the special February meeting. And then from there, we send it to, you know, as you said, send a question to council with our new priority lists. Like, what can we do now? And then what can we do? What can we work on? I think that would be a good starting point. I mean, if anybody else has anything else, I welcome it. Are we in agreement? Yes? No?
Should the February meeting be the week of Feb 15? Because that's kind of a halfway point. I'm seeing some nods. Okay, I'll send out a poll for the week of Feb 15.
And are we also in agreement that we want to open a section on the website for the comments? Is that also an idea that we want to go with?
I'm hearing that, yeah. Is that what folks, any disagreement?
As well, I still recommend we do the email to the community partners.
Yep.
Yeah, so email and comment page as well.
Does anybody want to quickly draft those things? I don't know if you have a way of phrasing or a voice at the center, or if that's something you'd like me to do. Either way is okay. I just don't want to, if anybody would like to do that, I don't want to step on toes, and I would welcome it, but whatever you think.
I'd be happy to work with you on it, Gretchen.
Okay, thank you.
Awareness.
Yeah, Gretchen, if you need my support as well doing any of this, I'm happy to help as well.
Thank you.
I think we found our starting point, which was good first step to do. Because I think that's where we were lost, because we didn't know where to start. Any more comments relating to our work plan development? Okay, hearing none, we'll go with that, and then just keep looking at your emails for this, and then also for the poll for our next meeting. All right, we can move on to task force and project updates. Awareness, Mike?
The bulk of what we talked about, I think, was the email to the community partners. I only have the agenda to work from because, of course, we just had the meeting, so I don't have all of the notes. So David or Tricarico, feel free to jump in if I miss anything. We did unfortunately have the person who was going to do our video drop out. They're unable to do the video at this time. So we're kind of back to square one. And so I committed to the task force that at our next meeting on February 24th, I would draft up some, I don't know, possible scripts that could make other kinds of videos. We'll keep pursuing the video option, but unfortunately our person that was going to do it is unable to. We were not able to really debrief the HRC 101 event at the awareness task force because Gretchen was away and none of us had actually attended the event. And I wonder if either Angelo or Krista or Gretchen wanted to say just a very brief, how did it go?
Yeah, Krista, go ahead.
I don't have any new updates. This is Krista. I don't know if Gretchen has any updates.
Well, Krista, we did have the 2 HRC 101s, and I appreciated your participation in those. It was great to have your perspective. Each one was very small. Each one was attended by one couple, and the other one was attended by 2 different people, but one knew quite a bit about us already and ended early. And so it was not attended by very many people, but I appreciated Krista and Angelo and also Lieutenant Aguilar in sharing some great information. We taped the second one, so we do have that in case communications folks want to tease out particular parts that might be usable. And the folks involved, we have a little email going on if there's any debrief from having completed 2 now, albeit with small attendance, that we might want to offer back to the awareness committee. Also, Mike, I hope the note got to you that although the person dropped out of creating the video, they would be delighted if someone would read it on their behalf. That was their understanding, is that somebody could be available to read their script and just speak their voice so that it's not them speaking their voice. So if there's a volunteer, we can certainly move forward with the script that we have. They just opted not to be the reader or the visual person on it.
Okay, I missed that detail in the note. That's great to hear. So we do have one script for a video in the hopper. That's great. And I think we can talk about if there's anyone on the broader commission who's interested in potentially doing that. Otherwise, we'll take it up at the next awareness around how we want to do that. But if anybody wants to volunteer, just contact me or any member of the awareness group. We did also talk about the student survey, and we have availability to do the survey with a class at Willamette this time. and that will be in April. So we did some early discussions about how we can improve upon the survey from last time while still keeping it related enough to the previous survey that we can compare results. Some of the improvements, as you know, we've talked about are making sure it's available in Spanish, making sure that it is written in plain language so that it's understandable at all education levels, making sure that it's distributed to a wider variety so that we have enough responses back that it's considered statistically valid. So those were some of the things that are priorities for the next version of the survey. And again, we'll be able to start on that with the students in April. And I skipped around a little bit on what we talked about, but we did talk some more about our email communications and brainstormed a whole bunch of really cool ideas for upcoming emails from the commission. One idea that really struck me was having a little piece in each email that profiled an individual commissioner. It shared maybe a little bit about the commissioner and their background, what brought them to the commission, that kind of thing. So again, if anyone is interested in participating in that or being profiled as a commissioner, please contact me or one of the task force members or Gretchen to let you know. And if we don't get any volunteers, we'll probably come to you and ask if you're willing to have a little spotlight in the email newsletters coming up. Did I miss anything, Tricarico and David? I think that's it for awareness, unless anyone has questions.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Core response. I don't have anything. Gretchen, do you have anything for core response?
I don't. Certainly pausing on asking for any sort of free training per the important input and discussion in the last meeting. And so I think it might relate to the budget request discussions that you're all having.
Okay, thank you. Equity lenses, Tricarico.
We haven't had any updates there. Dr. Brown and I are going to meet to discuss that a little bit more in depth after this meeting. And he's giving me a thumbs up right now. Thank you, Dr. Brown. We wanted to wait until this meeting to see kind of what the plan was with moving forward on the ask from the mayor. So I'll have more updates next meeting. But that's going to be a great thing we can offer right away to the city on our first recommendation because that's ready to go.
Any questions? All right. LGBTQIA intersectional task force, Mike.
Well, as we noted earlier, we had a discussion about input for the mayor's ask. So the members, we just discussed pie in the sky ideas like we think that the city should buy the JCPenney building and make it into community space and various other big picture ideas. So those will be in our notes and we'll contribute those. And I'm half joking about the JCPenney thing. We also had further discussion on the Safe Space project that we've been fiddling with and toying with in the LGBTQIA plus task force. A lot of discussion around how to handle from businesses that, so if you remember from our last time, this is a project that would allow businesses to opt in and identify themselves as a safe space for various communities within Salem, and they would have a visible signifier that they could put as a decal in their window, for example, to let people know that they were participating in this project. And as part of the project, they would sign a pledge that would be the things that they agreed to as part of the program. So they would be the kind of business that would treat all patrons equally. They would use people's correct pronouns. They would take accommodations seriously, and they would be responsive to the community when their community asked for accommodations. One of the pledge items was around racial profiling, that they would commit to not profiling their patrons and training their staff and how to appropriately respond to patrons and not hassle them when they walk in the door. Anyway, a lot of the discussion at our last meeting was around what do you do if a business participates in this program and then they have a complaint against them. So our committee kind of talked about various ideas for how to handle that using kind of similar processes from the formal complaint process that happens around discrimination. We also talked about potentially having the program be renewable, meaning that you wouldn't just sign up and sign the pledge in one and you're done, but that the businesses would need to renew each year, and through that process of renewal would be another way to sort of examine whether there were complaints or whether they were complying with the tenets of the program. I think there's a little bit more work for the LGBTQIA community or task force to do before we're ready to bring it back to the full HRC task force. But we did try to write the pledge in such a way that it touched many communities and it wasn't just about LGBTQIA plus issues, but that it was more broad. I'm hopeful that we meet on the 24th, same as the awareness task force, we meet the same night. And I'm hopeful that on the 24th, we'll be able to kind of finish up our portion of the work and then bring it to the broader commission. But given the mayor's ask and the need for all of this community input, maybe we may not want to take it up right away, but I'll leave that to Angelo to say when he would like us to take that up. But anyway, that was what we did. Any questions?
Angelo here. Mike, what did you say at the end? I didn't. You were cutting out for me. I just heard. I'll let Angelo decide, and that's it.
When we should bring it formally to HRC for discussion by the full commission, and just given all of the other things that we're doing related to the mayor's ask, I would just look to your guidance around when you would want us to bring it. I think we'll probably finish our portion of the work at the 24th. Don't you? Do you think Tricarico will finish on the 24th? We're pretty close.
Okay, yeah, I was just gonna say whenever you're ready. I think that's the best.
One idea that I thought was really intriguing was if we did a program where people needed to renew, that we might consider doing a different decal or sticker each year, and that we could maybe commission different local artists from different communities to produce the sticker. And some of the thinking behind that was that there are so many symbols of our diverse community. You know, you pick a rainbow and you're usually calling out the LGBTQIA plus community. You pick a trans flag colors and you're picking the trans community, or there are other symbols that represent other communities. And so we thought maybe with a renewing program, the symbols could change each year, or maybe there's like, you collect all the stickers if you're a participant, so you have one that has a year on it, and different artists have contributed to those. It seemed like a really neat idea for creating visibility, as well as showing that the program's expansive and not just for one community, but for all of our diverse communities in Salem. Just a neat idea.
All right, thank you, Mike. Any questions? All right, hearing none. Unsheltered neighbors, Krista.
This is Krista. I don't have any new updates for the unsheltered neighbors to report this month. I'm not sure if Gretchen has anything to add to that, but I don't have anything to report that's new.
I might add that our commissioner, Alan, who's not with us tonight, reached out to the city of Eugene and got some information regarding approaches for services related to our unsheltered neighbors, and then connected me with an employee there. So there's some information sharing as a result of Abigail's work. I believe the survey by Willamette University program is out. They were indicating they were going to be launching that. So I'm really curious to see what we can learn from their work and see if that addresses the questions that we had set out to answer with the survey document that we created. And if you're curious, I just before the meeting started, I heard that the fairgrounds is already at capacity. We opened the shelter, expanded the sheltering with the temporary managed operation at the fairgrounds, and I hear the indoor component's already at capacity.
Gretchen, what was the capacity? Was it like, what was it?
There's space for essentially 50 households, or you might anticipate 100 persons roughly on the indoor component. And so that's at capacity. There's also space to do 8 safe park vehicles in each side of the parking lot for a total of 16 vehicle spaces. And I didn't get an update on if those are already filled, but it wouldn't surprise me because I know the Safe Park program in Salem has a wait list.
All right, thank you. Okay, youth outreach, Nathan.
Yeah, so right now, I would say with youth outreach, I've been talking about the Human Rights Commission. I talked to Vanessa Nordyke, and I told her about how you guys wanted her to talk. I think she came at the last meeting, but I had to go a little early at the last meeting. Particularly at the school, we've been doing Black History Month, so that's been really cool. I'm doing a thing where we highlight famous Black people in Oregon's history, Black students at South. Here, I can actually pull it up real quick, right? And we go over, so we amplify Black voices, support Black-owned businesses, celebrate Black history, and yeah, so that's what we've been working on. I'm trying to work with Counselor Nordyke on the Cahoots thing too. I've been doing a lot of the social media for that, but I feel like a lot of the work that's getting done here is really good right now for all of that. So if you guys have any questions about that.
All right, if there's no questions, thank you, Nathan. Gretchen, staff updates?
I think that I need to apologize for not creating a calendar. It honestly, I was going to do it, and then all of a sudden here we are on the day. I'm not getting a ton of event information, so I'm not sure if I would have had anything to report, but I apologize for not completing a calendar. Other than that, I don't think I have any staff updates.
Thank you. Do any members of the commission have any events for the community calendar that they know of? Okay. All right. Member remarks and announcements. And then I also want to open this for our guests, Ryan, Dr. Brown, Rain, if they want to say anything, this is your opportunity as well.
Did Rain have anything? I was going to let him go first. Was there anything from Rain or no?
I don't have anything from Rain this time.
Okay, perfect. No, I don't have a lot to say. I know that Tricarico we've been in communication about, the equity matters, equity lands. And so Tricarico, I do have a brief update, and it really ties into what we discussed last week about budgeting. And so would this be a great place to share that, or should I just share that with Tricarico and when we talk? What's the best place? You tell me.
I say go for it.
Okay. Well, the news I received, remember how I talked about that there was monies that Salem has set aside for people in need during the pandemic for utilities. Well, after a nice long conversation today and one more next week with someone from the city, that money right now, and I say right now, and I use the term right now very loosely, because there's a policy in place that says utilities can only be used for utilities. And as I asked questions about that today, I found out that, let's say there's a family that really needs, to have internet service. Well, utilities will not cover internet service. Now, you and I, we may say that's a part of utilities, considering, students whose parents, may not have enough money for the kids to access to do their homework. We would process as utilities, but there's policy in place that utilities is only H2O. It's only water. And exactly, your facial reaction is what my mind has been doing for hours. And so it's only water, meaning if there was a family in need with a variety of other needs, this set aside money can only be used for water. And so I have another meeting next week to learn more about that, because it kind of hit me in my heart, because I'm thinking like, well, there has to be a way for families to access these funds, even though their need may be bigger than water. And so I don't know. And so it's not the best of news. I wanted to drop it in this space. It's not a happy to share, but at least I want to share with you that we did have one meeting, and that meeting was with the chair of the committee. And he's been the chair for the past, 3 years or so. And next week I'll meet with one of the directors to talk about, are there some things that we can consider? Just trying to put some pleas out there and see what happens. So anyway, that's not what I know this team wanted to hear, but I'm just being upfront with you that's what I found out today.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. I know it's not good news, but that's exactly the kind of things I want to know about, because I would say it's a human right to have heat and electricity and water. I mean, I know everybody here is going to agree with that. So that kind of goes back to, is that something that we can add to a recommendation to City Council? Is that something that we can add when we ask for an analyst to look at the city policies and say, how are these affecting people? And is it fair and is it equal? Right there, we've got a perfect example of something that is not.
Yes.
So I think that's just another thing that we can add. I know we've got a lot. I know I'm piling on thing number 5,000, but those are the exactly kind of things that we need to know about. So thank you for bringing that up.
Well, and I would definitely say that human rights have to play somewhere in there. But again, we all know that if you put on an equity lens, you should see that there's a whole lot that we're missing. So without an equity lens, that policy is just cemented with practices and procedures, and it stays there. And after our conversation today, that's tens of thousands of dollars that if it's not used, well, let's just go back to where it came from. And as of now, only $30,000 has been used, and there's $500,000 that's sitting there. And so, there's $500,000 that's sitting there. And so again, this is not information that I can hide in secret because I'm a part of this team. And so when you think about, utilities here in the city, how can we get these entities to talk to each other? Like the city and the county, PGE, how can there be some type of interface? I don't know, but I'm pretty sure once we get the right people in the room, we should be able to figure something out. So. So anyway, that's my little 2-minute blurb.
Angela here. Dr. Brown, do you know what happens to that money that's not used? Does it just go away, or what happens?
Oh no, I asked the same question. It does not go away. It just goes back to where it came from. And so the way that I understand it is that last year, utilities has a lot of money. Okay, utilities have a lot of money. And I found this out that there are only 2 big buckets where monies can come from. Monies can come from utilities, or monies can come from the urban renewal fund, which that's another whole conversation by itself, and I'm learning about that. But utilities has a lot of money. And so if that money is not used, then it goes back. And so the conversation I'm having now, and just to share this with the group, I have reached out to City Councilor Gonzalez, who's in the ward that I live in, because I want to get another ally to hear what we're talking about. And so, so anyway, I'm waiting to hear from him, but to my understanding, the money just goes back into the pot. And so for those families who may not know how to access it, life just goes on for them. Because here's what I said today. If there's a family that is struggling and their lights are turned off, there's no electricity, but the water works, they can't go to the internet to apply for these services. It just doesn't make sense. It's like if the power is out, you can't go online to apply for, to access these funds, and you can't go to the local library because the library's closed. So where does a family go to? So anyway, I'm just kind of like, I'm pushing back on that. So anyway. Any other questions or thoughts? But that's all I have.
All right, thank you, Dr. Brown. Anybody else have any comments, announcements, things they want to say?
I'm realizing I'm not knowledgeable about the funding stream that Dr. Brown is speaking of in terms of the utility. So these comments might not quite be responsive, but just taking the opportunity, given the listening ears, both here and on YouTube, it might help people who are in need to be aware of a few resources that I'm aware of. I know the city contributes to a fund at the Northwest Human Services, which is a really flexible crisis fund. So if a person has an unmet need, there's funds there and criteria, but there's a variety of types of things that can contribute towards. I recently added some dollars for vehicle repair, for example. If a person is living out of their vehicle and needs to make a repair, we added some money to try to address that need. I know over at the Mid-Willamette Valley Community Action Agency, there's an energy and weatherization program that assists with heating and as well as weatherization to try to make improvements to reduce heating bills. And there's a pot of funds over there. I think there are electricity resources through PGE and Salem Electric, but I'm less familiar with those. And so not to in any way speak intelligently about Dr. Brown's point, but just to make mention, if people are in need or looking for a service, there could be some resources out there. The Northwest Human Services has a pretty detailed resource guide on their webpage of information, Mid-Valley resources, and people can also text or call 211 or visit 211info.org and speak with a kind of a resource specialist and get connected with resources. So just in case that's helpful, I just thought I should add that, but I'm not familiar with, I don't mean in any way to speak to Dr. Brown's point, but just to add some resource information that's out there.
Yeah, thank you, Gretchen, for noting that. Any other remarks, announcements? All right. If not, I just want to say that you guys should keep your eyes peeled for that for in your email, because you'll get probably what we talked about, the list, and also a survey of what times we can meet for our second special meeting. And if that's that, this meeting is adjourned, and I hope everybody has a good night.
Bye.